People usually looked away when they saw the hells. Angel parked outside the gas station. The bike alone was enough to make most folks uneasy, low, rumbling, scarred from years of hard miles. The man who climbed off it didn't help much either. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black leather vest heavy with patches. His beard streaked with grey. Jack Reaper Malone had learned long ago that fear followed him everywhere, whether he wanted it to or not. At 42, Jack wasn't interested in intimidating anyone anymore. He was just passing through a small town in Arizona, stopping for fuel and coffee before getting back on the highway. Inside the gas station, the fluorescent lights buzzed softly as he paid at the counter. The cashier avoided eye contact, hands moving a little too fast. Jack noticed, but he didn't comment. He never did. As he turned to leave, he felt a light tug on the side of his vest. He looked down. A little girl stood there, no more than 7 years old. She was small, thin, with tangled brown hair pulled into a crooked ponytail. Her sneakers were worn, the laces mismatched. She held a faded pink backpack to her chest like it was the only solid thing in her world. Her eyes, wide and dark, were filled with something that didn't belong in a child's face. Worry. "Mister," she said softly, her voice barely louder than a whisper, "can you help me?" The room went quiet. Jack felt the attention of everyone inside the store shift toward them. He could almost hear what they were thinking. Of all the people she could have asked, why him? Jack slowly knelt so he was at her eye level. His movements were careful, deliberate. "What kind of help?" he asked gently. The girl swallowed hard. My mom won't wake up." Something cold tightened in Jack's chest. He kept his voice steady. "Where is your mom, sweetheart?" "She's in our car," the girl said, pointing through the front window. "She said she was just tired. But she's been sleeping for a long time." Jack stood up and nodded once. "Okay, let's go take a look." Outside, the heat pressed down on the cracked pavement. The car sat at the far edge of the lot, old and dented, its paint faded by years of sun. Jack opened the door carefully. A woman sat slumped in the driver's seat, her head tilted to one side. Her skin looked pale, almost grey. In the cup holder was an empty prescription bottle, the label peeled halfway off. Jack reached in and checked her pulse. It was there, but weak, too weak. Without hesitation, he pulled out his phone and dialed 911, his voice calm as he explained the situation. The little girl stood beside him, gripping his hand now, her fingers trembling. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. The girl looked up at him, her eyes shining with fear and hope all at once. "Is my mommy going to be okay?" Jack opened his mouth to answer, and for the first time in years, he didn't know what to say. The sirens grew louder until red and blue lights washed over the parking lot. Jack stepped back as the ambulance screeched to a stop. Paramedics jumping out with practiced urgency. One of them gently guided the little girl a few steps away while the other checked the woman's breathing. Jack stayed close enough to hear, far enough not to be in the way. His hands curled into fists at his sides. "Possible overdose," one paramedic said after a quick look inside the car. The word hit Jack harder than he expected. He watched as they worked, opening the woman's airway, attaching monitors, moving with calm efficiency that came from seeing this kind of thing too often. The little girl stood frozen, her backpack dangling from one shoulder, eyes locked on her mother's still form. Jack crouched beside her. "They're helping her now," he said softly. She nodded, but her lower lip trembled. She promised she'd wake up. Before Jack could answer, the woman suddenly coughed, her body jerking as air rushed back into her lungs. One of the paramedics shouted for the naloxone kit, and within seconds the woman gasped, eyes fluttering open in confusion. The sound of it, life coming back, made Jack's knees feel weak. "She's breathing," someone said. "We've got her." The girl let out a small sob and grabbed Jack's leg, wrapping her arms around it as if she might fall apart otherwise. Jack rested a hand on her shoulder, the simple contact grounding them both. Police cars arrived next. An officer spoke briefly with the paramedics, then approached Jack. His tone was firm but respectful. Jack answered every question plainly. His name, what he'd seen, how the girl had asked for help. There was no suspicion in the officer's eyes, only relief that someone had stepped in. A woman in a navy blazer arrived soon after, introducing herself as a social worker. She knelt in front of the little girl and spoke gently, explaining things in careful words. Jack listened from a short distance away, every sentence tightening the knot in his chest. Temporary placement, medical treatment, safety. The girl's eyes filled with tears. Do I have to leave her? For a little while, the social worker said softly. Just until your mom gets better. The girl shook her head, panic rising. Jack felt it then, sharp and sudden, like a blade to the ribs. He turned away, staring at his bike, at the chipped paint and worn leather. Anything to keep himself together, because he'd seen this before. Years ago it had been his younger sister. Same slumped posture, same bottle, same look of helplessness from people who loved her. No sirens had come fast enough that time. No stranger had answered a quiet plea for help. Jack swallowed hard. When he turned back, the girl was standing alone, shoulders slumped, trying to be brave. Jack walked over and knelt in front of her again. You did the right thing, he told her. You were very brave. She looked at him through tears. I was scared. So was I, Jack admitted. The gas station returned to its usual rhythm once the sirens faded. But Jack couldn't bring himself to leave. He sat on the curb beside his bike for a long time, helmet resting on the ground, the echo of the little girl's voice replaying in his head. By the time he finally rode away, the sun was dipping low, and the road ahead felt heavier than it ever had. He thought the feeling would fade with miles. It didn't. Days later, back at the clubhouse in California, Jack found himself distracted, quieter than usual. The guys noticed. He skipped the bar nights, stopped riding just for the sake of riding. Instead, he made phone calls, first to the number the social worker had given him, then to a local shelter she recommended. He didn't use his club name. He didn't want credit. He just wanted to know if the girl was okay. Her name was Emily. She was safe in school. Asking when she could see her mom again. That should have been enough. Somehow it wasn't. Jack started showing up at places he'd once ridden past without slowing down. Food banks, community centers, shelters for women and kids. Sometimes he came alone. Sometimes a few brothers came with him, drawn in by his quiet insistence. The leather vests didn't scare people as much when they were carrying boxes instead of attitude. Weeks turned into months. Emily's mother entered a treatment program. Jack paid for a few things anonymously, clothes, school supplies, counseling sessions. He never signed his name. He remembered what shame looked like and refused to add to it. 3 months after that day, the social worker called him. There was a supervised visit coming up, she said. Emily had asked about him. Jack rode out early, nerves twisting tighter with every mile. When he pulled into the parking lot, Emily spotted the bike first. Her face lit up like he was some kind of hero instead of a tired man with too many regrets. You came, she shouted, running toward him. He knelt just in time to catch her as she threw her arms around his neck. Jack laughed, a sound that surprised even him. I told you I would, he said. Emily's mother stood nearby, healthier now, eyes clear but filled with emotion. She walked over slowly. I don't know how to thank you, she said. You saved us. Jack shook his head. No, he replied quietly. She did. Emily squeezed his hand as they talked, telling him about school, about her new favorite book, about how her mom smiled more now. Jack listened, really listened, and felt something settle inside his chest for the first time in decades. When it was time to leave, Emily hugged him again. You're not scary, she said seriously. You're good. Jack swallowed hard. You are too. He rode away with the evening sun at his back, the road stretching wide and open. For years, he'd believed redemption was something meant for other people. But that day he understood the truth. Sometimes it doesn't come from changing who you are. Sometimes it comes from answering a small voice asking,